Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Salters Hall. There's sort of three key messages, really, I think we'd like you to take away from this morning. Really, over the last, in recent times, last 12 to 18 months in particular, the sort of policy and regulations have tightened up around sustainable drainage systems, or as we're going to call them, SuDS, as part of on-site drainage requirements on development. And secondly, SuDS is an important implication for your clients, and new guidance has been written, and for solicitors involved in property development and transactions, and to help you understand the issues and identifying some practical steps to take. So we'll be talking and showing you and talking about that guidance this morning. And then really the third issue is that GeoSmart Information are specialists in environmental information, specialists in this area, and we designed a report for solicitors to deal with the guidance and to help you address the issues.
What are SuDS? Sustainable drainage systems. So when we have intense or prolonged rainfall, this generates runoff, and it must be managed on the site, otherwise it will lead to flooding downstream. The aim of a SuDS system is to replicate the natural drainage from the site before it was developed, to reduce the runoff and flood risk, and also to improve water quality, amenity and biodiversity. Extreme rainfall events are happening now. It's not something off in the future, and they can happen anywhere in the country. It just depends on the storm track, etc. Why are they important? So development increases the hard standing and impermeable surfaces, reduces the permeability of soil, so you get a lot more runoff, you get less evaporation and evapotranspiration from the vegetation. Our current drainage systems and sewers, many of them are Victorian, they have limited capacity, and we can't just keep sending the runoff down the sewer. It's not going to work.
We expect local planning policies and decisions on planning applications relating to major development. And that's in the General Development Order, developments of 10 dwellings or more, or equivalent non-residential or mixed development, to ensure that sustainable drainage systems for the management of runoff are put in place unless demonstrated to be inappropriate. If you're acting for a developer in these circumstances, the developer has got to put up a technical reason why sustainable drainage systems are inappropriate, rather than simply saying it makes my development unviable. You've got draft planning conditions. I mean, this is a planning condition from South Cambridgeshire District Council. The development hereby approved shall be carried out in accordance with the details submitted in the SuDS management plan. What is a SuDS management plan? It is basically not just this is the SuDS we're putting in. It's much more about how we're going to maintain it. And indeed, you can see later on, approved by Anglian Water, so you can't just waltz in with your SuDS management plan. The development shall be maintained in accordance with the management plan hereafter. The reason for the planning condition: to ensure that measures to mitigate flood risk on the site once the development has been completed are fully implemented and maintained in accordance with the local plan policies. And so when in the guidance note we talk about the solicitor's job is to have a look at the local plan policy, in my view the client would have to be advised as to what policies NE 9 and NE 11 mean and how, if necessary, they're going to be complied with. An inexperienced client will expect to be warned of risks which are, or should be, apparent to the solicitor but not to the client. Any client is going to want to know that right from the start. He doesn't want to have his architect design a 100 house site, go to the planning people and be told by the planning people, well, what about SuDS? You're redeveloping a school, you've got the tarmac playground, do you replace the tarmac with more permeable surface, for example? Whether the review, 2017 review, will deal with retrofitting, I don't know, but I would suspect it's likely because it is the next step. And therefore, we're not just looking here in the medium term at new development, but we're also looking at retrofitting of existing developments.
My job now is really to point you towards some of the solutions that we've developed at GeoSmart, which we hope will be useful to property professionals in dealing with this problem. The two key data sets which we use in our reports are data sets which we've developed ourselves. So that is the groundwater risk data set, GW5, which covers England, Wales and Scotland. And off the back of that, we developed the SuDS data, sustainable drainage infiltration potential, which, as John said, is a key part of assessing suitability for sustainable drainage. When we're looking at sustainable drainage options and feasibility, we're following the best practice guidance, both in the building regulations and planning guidance. So it's a hierarchy that you have to follow. Paul's already mentioned that. So the first thing is looking at discharge to ground, then seeing if you can discharge to a neighbouring surface water feature, failing that, looking to sewers and so on and so forth. So what are our reports? Well, they are a tiered number of reports. They start with a screening report, which is £195 plus VAT. The aim here is really to assess the feasibility of SuDS and provide a traffic light as to green, amber, red. You know, some type of SuDS are always possible, but what we're trying to tell you really is how easy is it to install SuDS. If there is a problem, then what do you do then? There are other reports here which deal with the more technical considerations in terms of runoff calculations. And also, you may also want some design option feasibility studies. So when we move to the SuDSmart Plus and the SuDSmart Pro, we have reports which give you more detail on those particular considerations.
Okay, so the red line boundary, as I say, this is really for the screening report. And it may be for somebody who wants to buy a site, has never been to the site, they're interested in an area, they've looked at the land and assessed the cost, and they want to see what constraints and opportunities there are. We then have a look at the new SuDS infiltration mapping that we've put together at GeoSmart. The green is high potential for infiltration into ground, amber is moderate, and red is a very low potential. So all in all, and going back to Chris's red, amber and green rating, you might think actually it's going to be high up on the scale, and it really is. There's a really high potential for most SuDS.
The short answer to what you should do now is read the guidance note, and I guess I mean that quite seriously, in that it was the best part of 6 months in the offing, and a number of people in the room today actually helped contribute towards it. So quite a bit of the heavy lifting to think through what a policy change last year means to lawyers advising landowners and developers. Perhaps the major economic driver in the UK over that time frame is going to be property development, and it's going to be the accommodation of another 15 million people in the UK over the next 20 to 25 years. And in numbers terms, we have a housing stock of 26 million at the moment. We'll have another 4 million to 5 million, many of which will be located down in the southeast corner. Now, as John was saying, SuDS isn't just about the new, it's also potentially about the old and retrofitting. Set that against a warming, wetter climate, and yes, we have a bit of a challenge, essentially. So it's no surprise that SuDS sits fairly centrally within that challenge of achieving those new homes, economic growth, affordability, and where on earth does all the water go? The longer term cost of doing nothing, of getting this wrong, of having to repair houses and clean up, and the political difficulty and embarrassment of having to do that, to mop up every year or two, and increased insurance premiums, they said they were pretty clear that overweighed the short-term costs and expenses. Where planning permission is granted in an area of flood risk, it is right to impose an obligation on a developer to resolve problems caused by their development and not to worsen the situation elsewhere. And then you stand back, you think, well, how do you do that? And that's where SuDS come in. the key point is that sort of the do nothing is taking quite a risk. Because essentially, if you're the client, you don't want surprises. You don't want to find that late in the day, as Stuart was saying, these inquiries that are coming in several times a week, and the scheme's been designed by the architect. It's gone through planning, and the developer's saying, well, what's this about? I see a planning condition rating to SuDS. What's all that about? It's just too late. It has to be brought forward. Because if you're that client, you're not going to be very happy with your professional team. Some of the practicalities for your clients, yes, there's a land take issue here. The developer may be left owning the SuDS, the swale, the lake, the pond. And as we say, the long-term maintenance, because there may be pumps that are needed, or there may be various works that are required over time. And your job as lawyers is to ensure that they understand that, and depending on who you're acting for, that there's a mechanism there that will pay for it over the longer term.